So that's me, Dona, and I'm about to hit one of those milestones I had set when I first started this whole aviation adventure. But before I get ahead of myself, this whole thing has made me reflect on what it's been like to become a pilot in my late 30s and early 40s. So I figured, since winters here in Canada and flying has been very difficult to come by, I would sit in my Cherokee and go over the things that I learned and the major pros and cons about starting your flight training later on in life. So without any further delay, let's start with the pros and cons, and afterwards I'll tell you all about my major milestone that I'm just about to hit. All right, on to the pros and cons. And just kind of like when someone asks me whether I want the good news or bad news first, we're gonna go with the good news. So we're gonna start with the pros. First pro that I want to talk about, which was kind of one of the reasons I was even able to start my flight training in the first place, is the concept of disposable income. When you're older in life, in your 40s, early 40s, late 30s, at that point, usually you have your current career or job pretty much sorted out and you're getting a decent salary for the work that you're out there doing. For most people, you're gonna have a lot more disposable income, or you're gonna have some possibly assets that you can leverage in order to, pay the money that it costs to get your initial flight training. So having that extra money compared to, let's say, if I were to start doing my training when I was 18, definitely helped with the whole process and also sped things up. If you played your cards right, then you should be able to afford-ish to do your flight training. I know it's expensive, but that part technically should be a lot easier for you. The second pro I want to mention is that usually as we get older, especially guys, we end up being a little less cavalier and a little more mature. And since flying, if done well, is not inherently dangerous, it does come with some risks. So usually by your early 40s, you've calmed down a lot, and a lot of you will probably already have families that you want to go home to. So your natural disposition towards risk is going to be pretty low, as opposed to when you're a kid. Not that kids aren't safe. I'm just saying that it just takes a little time for our brains to kind of calm down. But in general, being less cavalier, being more mature, taking your time is definitely going to help you in the whole process of learning how to fly and how to control the plane. Another pro that I found, and this was more related to the theory. If you don't know, you're going to do your actual in-plane training, your flight training, but you also have some theory training, some flight school to do. And the flight school stuff is going to be a lot of studying. And basically how it works is that if you come from a baggage of experience, of life experience of being either an engineer or technical, if you've been a mechanic or you've just tinkered around with your lawnmower at home, doesn't really matter, anything with an engine, you technically should have a little bit easier understanding of the whole process and why it's happening. Especially also at that point, you've probably been into aviation for quite some time too. If you're starting your flight training in your late 30s, I doubt it's something that you never thought about. So you've probably watched a lot of YouTube videos, you probably have some just general knowledge that you've kind of accumulated in the back of your brain. And that's gonna be really helpful for you when you go about doing all your theory stuff and just understanding the basic concepts of flight. The last pro that actually worked for me essentially, and it kind of goes in line a little bit with the whole more down-to-earth nature of being older, but I found that I was able to really take on instruction a lot better. I was more calm, I was, let's say, attuned, or I was listening more than probably I would have been if I would have been 18, thinking that I already knew everything. Maybe that being humble, being a bit more risk averse makes you listen more and take your time, and also not being defensive. When your instructor is giving you criticism, it's not an insult. It's he wants you to succeed. So when you're older, you kind of tend to understand that concept a bit better, where you'll take instruction and you'll realize that what's being told to you is for the greater good of your training. If you do a good job picking your school and your instructor, it should all be positive criticism, and you need it. You need to be told the truth about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and then take that and be mature enough to assimilate that and then work on your training and get just better so you can learn faster and progress faster. All right, now we're gonna be the negative Nancy and we're gonna go through the cons that I've found so far going through my flight training. And the main one tends to be having less time. In your 30s and 40s, usually at this point, you're probably gonna have a family and kids. Family and kids take up a lot of time, and then so does work, because probably you're gonna have to keep your day job while you're doing your training, at least while you're transitioning. So with those obligations, you're kind of going to be limited with the amount of time you can fly. And if you can only fly once a month, once every 2 months, well, it's gonna take a lot longer to finish this whole process of getting your license, because every time you're gonna come in for your new lesson, you're gonna waste about half an hour, which is like a third of your flight time, just relearning what you learned last time. So definitely one of the major cons is gonna be your time constraints. But if you want to piss off your wife and just take your whole, 3 weeks of vacation and try to like blitz through your training, it's gonna go really fast and you're gonna get it done. You might sleep on the couch, but hey, pilot's license, happy wife, I don't know. You guys decide where you want to put your priorities. So, definitely time is something that you're going to have to consider and work around accordingly with your schedule and your other obligations. Another one of the cons I'm going to say, which kind of took a little getting used to in a sense, is that when I started my flight training, I had been out of university and college for a long time. I'm going to say about 20 years to be exact. So let's just say that even though as a human being, I enjoy learning, I'm always trying to learn something else. When it comes to like cramming your brain full of information from textbooks, it had been a long time. And at the beginning, I found it pretty rough to just memorize all this information. I was doing the theory class and then I was flying, twice a week and trying to get it all done. So it's like sometimes I got home at night and like I felt like my brain was just like expanding so much that it was hurting. You get that feeling. It's like feel like brainiac with your big brain sticking up. I had a hard time, I had to get reused to learning, but still like just having to cram that much information in such a small amount of time and then going out and flying, applying the information right away. It was a lot to process. So depending on how long it's been since you've gone to school or how you like school in general, that part can be a little difficult. Another thing that might be a little bit more difficult, and that's kind of the same thing for like even starting any kind of other sport in life, is that your body, when it gets to a certain age, and your brain isn't really still in its peak learning mode. Like when you're a kid, you can do something, you pick it up right away, it's super easy. When you're an adult, especially a bit older, you actually have to put effort into learning it. And when it comes to flying a plane, there's a bit of like hand-eye coordination stuff that needs to get done. And that's something that, I actually even still struggle with right now. I'm doing a lot of, training and exercises with my current instructor to try to like get me to jump on foot control as soon as we get on the ground. So like that whole hand-eye body coordination can take a little bit longer at the beginning, but you will pick it up. Just keep practicing, like anything, repetition is key to understanding and getting it done. Expect to maybe have some challenges there, but then again, maybe not. Maybe you are a pro athlete already and your brain completely understands, the hand-eye coordination stuff, and that might be easy. But that's something that I had to personally deal with and just kind of get used to. Separating my feet, my arms from what I'm so used to them doing usually, because I've been driving for so long, a car and not so much a plane. All right, so another con I want to cover, and actually there's two of them and they kind of work together, but the first one's going to be about your medical license. So I don't know if you know, but in order to become a pilot, to have your pilot license, you're gonna need to pass a medical exam to make sure that you are fit to fly. Because the last thing the government wants after they give you your license is for you to have a heart attack in your plane and then crash in someone's house. So you're gonna need to get your medical license. If all you wanna do is your private pilot license, just to fly around, rent a plane from time to time, then you're gonna need a class 3 medical, and that one is pretty straightforward. You just go see an aviation doctor. They do a quick check for your general health, and they look if you are colorblind and all that stuff, and then they sign you off on your medical license. And that medical license under 40 years old will last 5 years, but if you're above 40, it's gonna last 2 years. So keep in mind that you'll have to stay on top of basically your expiration date and make sure that you get it renewed every 2 years, because if your medical expires, so does your pilot license. However, if you want to do your commercial license, then things get a little bit similar for the over and under 40. Either way, your medical, which is going to be a class 1, is going to expire every year and you have to get it renewed every year. And if you're over 40 working on a single pilot operation, you're going to have to get your medical redone every 6 months if you're over 40. So just be aware of those limitations and know that, you're gonna have to keep a closer eye on your expiry date for your medicals, and you're gonna end up getting more medicals than, let's say, someone that is under 40. Now, the last con that I have kind of goes along with if you decided to go for the commercial license route because you wanted to change careers. In that case, well, there is one thing that's going to be a major con for you, and that is going to be your seniority number. Most airlines, carriers, businesses, anyone that employs pilots in general, everything is decided based on your seniority with the company, your vacation time, your scheduling. So you're gonna start out in your 40s being at the bottom of the totem pole, just like any other new hire at any other company. So depending on what kind of lifestyle you had before becoming a pilot, you might have to adapt and adjust to that new life. So that pretty much covers the pros and cons, and I'm really curious to see if any of you started your training later on in life, and if so, what has your experience been like? Comment below and let me know what it's been like for you guys and the things that you've noticed.
All right, so what about this milestone I was telling you all about? And essentially, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to be hitting my 200 hours of total flight time. And I know some people will think, well, that's not a lot of flight time. A lot of people have like thousands of hours. I know. But for me, it's one of those milestones I set because by that time, in my mind, I would be basically eligible to actually get my commercial pilot certificate and move on to maybe working in aviation. And although I'm about to hit that 200 hours and I'm extremely happy, I'm not exactly where I wish I was, to be honest. Going back to like what I talked about in the pros and cons, essentially I had problems with like having that extra time I was telling you all about. So I wasn't able to actually get out and fly as much as I wanted to. But you know, now I'm kind of making an effort and setting, you know, some time to really apply myself to finish the rating. And also, I had a hard time trying to find an instructor, but now that's changed. I found a really great instructor who actually lives a couple minutes away from the airport. So since I've found him, that has been going a lot better, and I've already done 10, almost 12 hours with him just to, you know, fill out the dual training requirements for that license. Anyways, all that to say that I'm just about a couple seconds now. I should be hitting the 200, but I'm not exactly where I was hoping I was going to be once I got to that 200. But you know what? You know, life is what it is. You have to enjoy the journey, and sometimes the destination is not necessarily the only goal. And boom, there we have it, folks. I am now at 200 flight hours total time. Wow, that's really fantastic. And I'll keep you guys up to date on, you know, how my commercial pilot training is actually progressing as far as the, you know, remaining hours I need to finish off, and then what the plan after that will be. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing my IFR next, and then after that we'll do the multi-engine and all that jazz. All right, so back to you, Donna, on the ground.
So there you have it, folks. For any of you who think that it's too late to become a pilot, know that it really isn't. And as long as you keep in mind everything I've said in this video, you should have no problem completing your pilot's license and having the fun of your life with one of the most beautiful hobbies and or jobs that exists in the world. So pick up that phone, call up your local flight school, and book that discovery flight. You won't regret it. On that note, it's going to be it for this one. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one. Fly safe.